everyone. So yes, as just mentioned, I will be talking about my high school journey. And I'm Ruth Lu from American High. I'm a senior. Okay, so wow, American High. As you can see, I am currently attending American High, about to graduate, very excited. And I will be going to MIT this fall. So first, I want to put out some college application details because I know everyone cares about those. So I applied as a CS major. I had a 4.0 GPA and 1570 SAT score. And then another important thing to mention is that 1.5 years of my high school experience, especially my junior and the second half of sophomore year, were online. So my experience might not apply to everyone here because like junior is pretty critical for college applications from my understanding. All right, so moving on. So first of all, I want to talk about some of the extracurriculars I did in school. I want to mention that I did not found or start any organizations or clubs in or out of school. I know a lot of people believe that it's a requirement that you have to like start a club or do something really like start your own thing to get accepted into top colleges, but that's not true. It's good enough to just be invested in an activity that's already exists and just like put your effort into it, like work hard in it, rise in the ranks, eventually achieve a leadership position, and that's also really good. So my example of this is Science Olympiad, which I've been doing since middle school. Science Olympiad is honestly my favorite extracurricular because it allows me to explore so many different areas of science. And it's just fun working with a team and a partner all the time. So in high school, I joined it in 9th grade after being part of the Thornton Science Olympiad team for 2 years. And I competed it all throughout high school, which is pretty important. So colleges like to see that you do something consistently. So if you're able to do it for all 4 years, then they will like that. Obviously, with the pandemic, that was not possible for everything. But now that the pandemic is kind of, everyone's basically agreeing to pretend it's over, probably everything will be back to you should do something as consistently as possible. So I became the president in 12th grade, which is probably important, I assume, because that's, yeah. Also, another thing that I did throughout all of high school was AI Club. AI Club is just this club in American. It's kind of a sub-club, not an actual club. And we just teach people about AI. So I was also the president in 12th grade. I also joined a number of other clubs in freshman year, but then I realized that they weren't things I was that interested in, such as math club, which is a really great club at American, but I still wanted to I still decided that it wasn't something I was super interested in. So I decided to drop that. So the key is join what you're interested in, but don't be afraid to drop things if you realize that you're not really that into it. So I also want to talk about extracurriculars outside of school because I had a lot of those as well. So first, I want to talk about my experience with CovEducation, which I do believe probably was pretty significant in helping me get into MIT because it's actually a nonprofit that was founded by MIT and Harvard students during the pandemic to help K-12 students avoid learning loss. So I joined in April of 2020, which is about when it started. I saw an advertisement by an alumni of Science Olympiad, and I was like, you know what, that sounds cool. I'm going to join. So at that time, school had just kind of disappeared out of nowhere, and teachers had no idea what was happening. Students had no idea what was happening. We had we had 6 hours of free time every day when school used to be. So I just spent that time doing logistical volunteer work for them because at that time they needed a lot of logistical volunteer work done. And then I kept working on it all throughout high school, and eventually I was promoted to the co-head of the coordinator team in fall of 2021, which obviously I put on my college applications because I assume that looks good. Another thing I spent a lot of time in is academic competitions, which this is not necessary for a lot of colleges. I know friends who got into places like Berkeley EECS without ever doing a single competition, but I personally like competition and taking tests. I know that sounds probably really weird, but I think it's really fun. So one of them is a USA Computing Olympiad, or USACO as it's commonly called, where basically they give you a computing problem, you have to solve it. If you can solve enough problems, then you can move on to the next level. And in this one, I eventually achieved the platinum level, which is the highest level before camp. Another thing I did was the AMC, or the American Mathematics Competition. And the idea behind that is you take the AMC. If your score is high enough, you get to take the AIME, or the American Invitational Mathematics Competition exam. So I qualified for the AIME 3 times. And how I practice for a lot of these is I use past exams. For example, during the pandemic, there wasn't really anything to do. So I would get up in the morning, do a USCO problem for an hour or so just to get some practice. And then sometimes in the afternoons, I'd do a practice AMC. So that way I could continue to improve. Because with a lot of these competitions, the best way to improve is just to do past problems and see what could potentially come up. There were also personal projects. I had a lot, but I think the most notable one and like the only one I wrote about was the bird ID bot, which is something that my friend and I did in the summer of my freshman year. Basically, we thought that there was a science Olympiad event about ornithology where you had to identify birds. So my friend and I coded up a bot to like send people pictures of birds, and then they would practice identifying those pictures. And it got really popular. So that's why I decided to write about it. And it was, everyone else thought it was fun to use. I didn't do ornithology for like a few years, so I don't know. There was also a couple of extracurriculars I was involved in, such as Superposition Fremont, which is a branch of a nonprofit Superposition, which is basically like women in STEM kind of thing. Tutors in Action, which is a group that was getting high school students from around the Tri-City area to volunteer to teach students in Union City, I think, elementary school students. And finally, Fremont Flute Ensemble, which is something I did before the pandemic started, because after the pandemic started, it was kind of hard to have a flute ensemble. But yeah, it's what it sounds like. There was a flute ensemble in Fremont. So next, I want to talk about choosing classes, which is obviously another really big part of the high school process. So how I decided to make most of my class choices was I chose classes that sounded challenging, but not that I was interested in, but they weren't like too overwhelming. For example, I wanted to learn more about engineering, so I joined Principles of Engineering Honors, even though at the time it had kind of a bad reputation at our school because it was said to be really difficult. But people also said it was a lot of fun. So I was like, you know what, might as well give it a try. And yeah, if it doesn't work out, that's okay too. So I joined it, and it was really fun until the pandemic started and it disappeared like everything else. So that was one of them. And I think Principal of Engineering Honors honestly made a really big impact on me deciding to choose like just CS in general, because even though engineering isn't really CS, like a lot of this class is about problem solving, coming up with solutions, working with a group. And I thought that was something I would like to do in the future. So another one was AP English Language, which is also a pretty difficult class, I think. Fortunately, we didn't during the pandemic, so that made it a lot easier because the teacher like removed a lot of the assignments that she gave to people in normal years. Yeah, but still, I learned a lot from it. I learned how to write better, still not very well, but better at least. And then I took the AP exam, and then fun fact about the AP English exams is that if you get a 5 on them, you can skip so many classes in college. So in UCs at least. So it's good to get try to get a 5 on one of the AP English exams. So moving on to about class choices. So most colleges will look at your unweighted GPA, with a few exceptions, which is the UC system, and I believe the CSU system will look at a bit of weighting, but they will also consider class difficulty. So if you just take like, if you take like all the easiest classes, that probably doesn't look good, but you also don't need to like try to get into every like class that's weighted, because that won't like matter that much. Additionally, you will be given a course catalog from your school, so you will not be penalized if your school does not offer certain classes. For example, I know that American High, for example, does not let 9th graders take AP classes. And the thing is, colleges will know that like, oh, 9th graders in American High can't take AP classes. It's not their fault if they don't take AP classes. So yeah, so that's a nice thing to know. Something that you should think about whenever you're choosing classes, extracurriculars, anything to be involved in is if you do not get into your first choice college, would you still be happy with your high school years? So I think that's important. You shouldn't like be trying to like grind for college all 4 years of high school. You should still find time to enjoy yourself, learn the things that you find interesting, have fun with friends. Now that like we're back to like being open again, even though like now masks are required again in Alameda County. But yeah, just enjoy yourself in high school. Don't like stress too much. Well, you're probably still gonna stress, but yeah. So now I want to move on to talking about standardized testing, which is, it's been a pretty big debate in the past few years. So I'll just point this out. UCs and CSUs are going completely test blind. So from what I understand, that last time I checked, they're just like no more tests for them. However, if you're applying to like out of state, privates, whatever, a lot of them still will be test optional, and a few of them, such as MIT, are test required now. So it might still be good to like take a test just once or twice. Yeah, if you get a good score, report it. If you don't, like hold back on it. So there's a lot of free resources for the SAT online. For example, you can go to Khan Academy. Khan Academy has a free SAT prep that they do in collaboration with College Board. You can go to the library and borrow those free SAT books. And you can just work on the problems on a separate sheet of paper, so that way you don't like mark up a library book. And again, as with all tests, practice tests are the most important thing you can do to prepare for a test. Because the thing about like the SAT is the material on it is not that difficult. It's probably like 10th grade level stuff, at most 11th grade level stuff. It's not that difficult, but the thing is you have to get good at speed. You have to recognize the little mind tricks they try to do with you because they know the stuff isn't difficult, so they try so hard to trick you. It's really annoying. Also, another thing I want to point out is a lot of students find the ACT much easier than the SAT. Like I've talked to a lot of people who are like, I didn't get that good a score on the SAT, but then I took the ACT once and got like a perfect score on it. I didn't agree with that because I'll be honest, I found the ACT harder, but it's up to you. So you should try out like practice tests with both SAT and ACT. Look at which one that you find easier because colleges see both of them as like equally pretty good. So pick the one that you prefer. Finally, AP tests. So AP tests are kind of like, it's unclear because colleges say they don't matter, but they might matter and you can skip classes with them. So it's still good to try to get a good score on them, especially if you're considering aiming for the UCs or other public schools. So the FRQs are all available online, and this should be one of your first like resources to practice the FRQs. Additionally, you can always borrow AP prep books from the library, or you can buy them. Like usually past year students will resell them for pretty cheap, like $5 for each one. Yeah, AP prep books are super useful to prepare for the AP test. All right, let's take a look. What's next? So finally, I want to talk about choosing a college list. So there's actually a lot of things you want to consider when making a college list. You have to consider each college and the list as a whole. So just a suggestion for some things, what you might want to consider is a cost. For example, if you know that you're not going to be able to pay for like USC, even if you get in without a scholarship or something, then maybe you don't want to apply for it and waste your time. The location, if you hate the cold, maybe don't apply for a school in Maine. Size, is it a big school like UC Berkeley, is a small school like Caltech? Private versus public, that one should be obvious. Academic programs, like if a school is ranked really highly, but it doesn't have the program you're interested in, probably don't apply. So first of all, you want to have safeties, which are 2 or 3 schools that you would definitely want to go to and that you can definitely get into. You probably won't end up choosing your safeties as to go to, but just in case. So for example, in the California, you can choose the less competitive CSUs, which are pretty good safeties. They're not that expensive and they're still pretty good. And community colleges, because you can transfer from community colleges to like a 4-year college. For computer science, there's a couple of like specific like safeties that are really good, such as Arizona State University. And next, you want the targets. Your targets are the schools that you probably can get into, but it's not like 100%. It's more like, I think 30 to 80% is the usual people aim for. So this will depend on your GPA, your extracurriculars, and what major you're choosing. This is really important because some majors have really crazily different like admission rates from everything else. For example, UC Berkeley's ECS has like, what was it? I think ECS has like a single digit admission rate while LNS has like a 16% admission rate. I don't remember the exact statistics. Yeah. So you want to look at the specific major. And finally, you want your reaches, which is basically anything that has a pretty low chance of admission. So for example, like MIT would be considered a reach, Stanford, and for some majors, UC Berkeley is probably considered a reach, UCLA is also as well. So anything that has an admission rate where it's below like 20%, 15%, whatever, is considered a reach, regardless of what achievements you have. Because at that point, it basically becomes random because a lot of kids will have the same qualifications as you. It'll come down to like whose admission officers thinks works better. So I just want to talk about some of the colleges on my list. So some of the safeties I chose were the CSU East Bay because it was like, it's right next to my home. So I was like, you know what, if I don't get anywhere good, at least I'll be like right next to my house. And also ASU, which I mentioned because it has a pretty decent computer science program. And it has a super high admission rate, like 80% or something. And you don't even need to write an essay for it. So I was like, you know what, that's great. Yeah, both of these, no essay needed. That was really nice. For my some of my targets were UC Santa Barbara and Virginia Tech. And yeah, UC Santa Barbara, it's a UC. It has a pretty decent admission rate, and it's like next to the sea. It's really nice. Virginia Tech, it has a pretty good CS program, and I heard the food is good, so that's why I picked it. Yeah, I probably should have been a bit more selective when it came to college choices. And some of my reaches were UCLA and MIT. All right, thank you.